You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. We'll have more news this evening, but first...
The latest Gene-ology, a Roddenberry podcast.
Episode 45, Tiger. Welcome to Mission Log Gene-ology. I'm Ashley Thomas.
And I'm Earl Green. Each week on Gene-ology, we go on a hunt through Gene Roddenberry's early TV writing, trying to find out along the way if he was fond of including in his early work the kinds of morals, meanings, and messages that were part and parcel of his most famous later work, Star Trek. Also, I taught a putty tat.
I did taw a putty tat. Earl will be back with trivia in a moment, but first, here is how you can reach us. Gene-ology is meant to be entertaining and informative, but it is also just the beginning of an ongoing conversation about the works of Gene Roddenberry. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook at missionlogpod. While you're at it, leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember, your comments could be used on future installments of Gene-ology, so say lots of nice things about us, please and thank you.
Now, before we get to trivia, here's just a reminder that, as always, Gene-ology is brought to you by you, and meaning our listeners and supporters on Patreon. Ashley, we chucked you in the deep end of the Mission Log Discord, which you get access to by going to patreon.com/missionlog. What have you found there?
I have really enjoyed being in the Mission Log Discord thus far. There are all sorts of topics. First of all, when I jumped in, and you know, this is because I'd been recording with you for a couple of weeks at that point. You know, folks had gotten to hear my voice, and I was kind of a known quantity for Sci-Fi 5, but I wasn't in the Discord during the heyday of Sci-Fi 5. But you know, I walk in the door, and I feel like I'm on an episode of Cheers. Everybody says, Ashley's here. And I was like, oh my gosh. They're like, oh yay, you're here. And I was like, oh, thanks guys. Thanks, I really appreciate that. But, you know, you just kind of jump in. There's all kinds of different threads where you can talk about things you're interested in. In particular, if you're listening to this, you love Star Trek, you love sci-fi. There's lots of threads for sci-fi that isn't Star Trek. If you are a Marvel nerd like I am, there's a Marvel thread. If you like to cook, or you enjoy fancy food, or even not fancy food, there's an Epicureanism thread. So I posted a not fancy picture of the other night where I made a makeshift julep, as what I called them, which is basically whiskey on the rocks with a couple of teaspoons of peppermint syrup. So there you go. There's a place where you can share pictures of your critters at home. So lots of kitty cats, lots of puppy dogs. There's all kinds of different places where you can jump in and just hang out, say hi, talk about things you're into. There's threads for each of the Roddenberry podcasts, like Mission Log, Gene-ology, and you get just good camaraderie. And, you know, if a lot of folks are still staying at home more these days, just, you know, trying to be cautious with COVID and things like that, there are weekly virtual hangouts like this where you can talk and hang out with your fellow Mission Log patrons. So what more do you want? It's a great place to hang out on the internet without the hullabaloo of other social media sites. Yeah,
definitely. Which, believe me, in an election year, that to me, that's its own selling point right there. 100%.
I've been saying for years now, if you early vote, you should be able to opt out of all other political advertisements after that. You would get 100% voting rate if you did that.
That's a great idea.
You would. It's a brilliant idea. I mean, I can't take credit for it, I'm afraid, but another of my friends said it, and I was like, that's amazing. It's such a great idea. Why have we not implemented this technology? So think of it as, just a way to avoid all of that, because I get, informed delivery with the U.S. mail. I know I've got political ads sitting in my mailbox right now that I haven't looked at just because I'm like, I don't wanna. If you would like to avoid all of that, just join the Mission Log Discord.
That's right. Join us at patreon.com/missionlog. Any amount will get you in. It just has to be some amount. $1 will get you in. More than $1 is, trust me, is very much appreciated. And you can join us. You can go straight to the Gene-ology forum and just AMA.
Please.
We are there. I'm not going to say we're there all the time. My sleep schedule is very random, so I'm probably there more often than, strictly speaking, I should be, and at the weirdest possible hours. But that just means you can ask a question and probably get an answer without having to wait too long for it about whatever your fandom happens to be, even if it's funny pictures of cats.
I am very pro funny pictures of cats.
Absolutely.
Please send me all your pictures of cats.
Yes, exactly. Join us on patreon.com/missionlog, and we will see you there among us.
And now, this week's trivia. Earl, take it away, friend.
I'm going to grab this tiger by the tail and see where it takes me. We are on episode 11 of Season 3 of Have Gun Will Travel, aired on November 28th, 1959. It would be separated from Gene's next Have Gun script, Charlie Red Dog, by one episode in between the two, which involved Paladin going on a buffalo hunt. So I guess Hollywood hadn't really gotten the whole memo yet about working with kids or animals, because Gene's next episode is Charlie Red Dog, this is Tiger, the one in the middle has Buffalo. It seems like we are trying to cover the entire animal kingdom. Our guest stars this week are an interesting bunch. As Ellsworth, the guilt-ridden retired big game hunter, we have Parley Bear, the original voice of Mr. Keebler in the original Keebler Cookies TV commercials. But here is where it gets interesting. Parley Bear had also worked as a ringmaster for Barnum and Bailey's circus. Now, seeing as a circus is kind of central to this episode's plot, you could be forgiven for thinking, oh, well, that's what got him the job, naturally. But Parley never interacts with the very tame tiger that we meet in the episode's final act, so really it's just more of a strange coincidence than anything. He was the voice of Chester on the long-running Gunsmoke radio series, worked for the Los Angeles Zoo, and long before all of that, he had been an announcer on KSL Radio in his hometown of Salt Lake City. We lost Parley in 2002. As Pondu, we have Paul Clark, and this is where things get a bit weird with the casting, because we have, by all appearances, a very white actor being made up and giving a performance as a character from India. IMDb has very little on Paul's career. If we go by that alone, he spent barely a decade in front of the cameras, also appearing in Tales of Wells Fargo, Maverick, and Sea Hunt. Elsa Cardenas guest stars as Laurie. She was already a very well-regarded actress in her native Mexico, and an appearance in the 1956 Western The Brave One, which was filmed in Mexico, brought her to the attention of Hollywood. Much bigger roles followed that same year, starting with Giant, which starred Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, and James Dean. So talk about suddenly being in the orbit of the A-list. She appeared in the Sam Peckinpah Western The Wild Bunch in 1969. According to her bio, it was not uncommon for her to be cast in Indian and other ethnic roles that didn't really line up with her actual heritage. Clegg Hoyt is seen briefly at the end as the trainer trying to cage the tiger once more. We will see Clegg in Star Trek. He appears in The Cage as Transporter Chief Pitcairn, which technically means that outside of Worldcon audiences who were shown the black and white print of The Cage that Gene had, nobody got to see Clegg's very brief Star Trek appearance until Part 2 of The Menagerie in 1966. Also remember that character's surname, Pitcairn, because it'll turn up again in Gene-ology. Stay tuned. Playing the somewhat suspect British detective Jay Hawkins is Terence DeMarnay, who, for all of the not-quite-authentic casting going on in this episode, is actually a British-born actor. His career started on the stage in England and then moved to the screen, and for a while he was in demand in Hollywood, appearing also in episodes of Bonanza, Peter Gunn, The Twilight Zone, and no fewer than 3 episodes of Have Gun Will Travel, as a different character each time, which is often the case. After making his way back to the UK, he put in appearances in Softly Softly, Z-Cars, and even a small part in a single episode of Doctor Who in 1966, which happened to be one of William Hartnell's final episodes. In 1971, according to his bio on IMDb, he fell under a train in the London Underground and died as a result of his injuries. He was only 63 years old. Act 1. First thing in the morning at the Hotel Carlton, Paladin is decked out in his going-out-on-the-town gear and greets Hey Boy, while a man with a worried expression watches him closely. But Paladin knows he's there. The man reaches into his vest pocket, and Paladin advises him to withdraw that hand very carefully. And, whoa, Paladin has drawn his Derringer and aimed at the guy from beneath his morning paper. The man pulls out a business card, one which does not have a musical theme and is therefore an inferior business card, identifying himself as Mr. Hawkins from the Empire Detective Agency in London. Hawkins, in turn, asks for Paladin to identify himself, and Paladin hands him his card, a business card that does have a musical theme, da-da-da-da, and establishes his credentials. Well, that's all Hawkins needed to see. He's been tasked with tracking Paladin down to hand him an envelope. It contains a bank draft for $1,000 drawn on a bank in Argus, Texas, along with a very simple message from Mr. John Ellsworth. Come kill a tiger before it kills me. A tiger? In Texas? Well, it must have escaped from the zoo. Paladin wryly admits that he's heard Texas has everything, but he didn't know that included tigers. With that, he sends Hey Boy to go buy his train ticket to and from Texas. Act 2. Argus, Texas. Paladin rides into town on the back of a rented horse, looking for Ellsworth. He finally finds just the place where he's greeted by a chatty chimpanzee and challenged by Pandu, a man Paladin met in his younger days during an adventure in India. Pandu recommended Paladin to his current employer, and that would be Mr. Ellsworth himself. Pandu says Ellsworth is summoning up a tiger, a phrase that Paladin repeats back to him incredulously. Well, maybe Ellsworth himself should explain. But before getting anywhere near making a point about his case, Ellsworth wants to make sure Paladin knows just how filthy, stinking rich he is, revealing that Pandu is in love with an Indian woman, Laurie, who's Ellsworth's house servant, reveling in the fact that since he all but owns them both, Ellsworth prevents them from exploring that relationship. When a stray black cat shows up at the open door of Ellsworth's home, he orders Pandu to kill it, but Paladin blocks the shot and allows the cat to escape. This infuriates Ellsworth, who is accustomed to his bank balance, meaning that he is in charge wherever he goes, but Paladin sits him down and puts him in his place. Paladin has figured out why he's here. Ellsworth imagines he's the victim of a Bengal tiger curse. Ellsworth tells the rest of the story. He once hunted a tiger in India and failed to kill it, only wounding it. When the tiger recovered from its injuries, it killed many of the locals in the village where Ellsworth was staying. When another stray cat wanders in and doesn't take well to Ellsworth aggressively approaching it, he says this only proves his point. According to the curse, more and more cats will appear, larger and more aggressive each time, until finally the tiger is summoned to make good on the curse. Evening at Ellsworth's place. Ellsworth and Paladin are playing chess. Well, Ellsworth is. Paladin's barely paying attention to the game, and he still checkmates his host, and the banter isn't getting any friendlier. Paladin remarks that $1,000 is just covering the annoyance of remaining in Ellsworth's company. Actually protecting him from a real tiger would cost another $1,000. Ellsworth cuts him another check on the spot because, hey, he can. The howl of a mountain lion outside grabs both of their attention. Even though Paladin dismisses Ellsworth's talk of a tiger curse as superstition, it's getting kind of difficult to explain or ignore. By day, Pandu and Paladin look for tracks or other signs of the mountain lion outside, but while it's just the two of them out there, Paladin asks just how much Pandu hates Ellsworth for how he treats his servants. Then Paladin gets to the point. Does Pandu hate Ellsworth enough to do things that would mess with his employer's head and maybe force him into an act of desperation? But the questions offend Pandu, and Paladin presses no further, apologizing by offering to take him into town to visit the tobacconist. After enduring some openly racist abuse from the locals, Paladin and Pandu watch as the tobacconist nails a sign up advertising his circus is coming to town, complete with a tiger. Oh, Ellsworth's gonna love this. Act 3. At Ellsworth's compound, Ellsworth is nowhere to be found. Pandu tells Paladin that the boss has gone to hide out in the next town until Paladin can solve this tiger problem, presumably by killing the tiger. By process of elimination, Paladin figures out that the next town is Humboldt, Texas, which happens to be where the circus is making a stop before moving into Argus. Paladin hits the trail from Argus to Humboldt and is stopped by two armed men. Not robbers this time. There's been an accident. A circus wagon turned over and the animals got loose. That would include one tiger, presumably, and these men were tasked with stopping any locals from riding into harm's way unaware, except for one fat man who wouldn't listen to them. Paladin rides through the roadblock, trying to outrace destiny before it comes due. Further down the trail, Ellsworth, also on horseback, hears something growling in the bush nearby. This spooks his steed, who throws Ellsworth off and takes off in fear, leaving Ellsworth on foot and defenseless. He tries to climb to higher ground. Paladin happens upon the circus wagon just in time to see two circus workers get the tiger back into its cage. Paladin approaches them and discovers that the tiger is old and not exactly in fighting shape. Probably just needs some belly rubs. He laughs out loud and calls Ellsworth's name because it seems like everything was shaping up for the man to be here. And then all three men hear the scream and stop laughing. After searching, they find Ellsworth's body. He was so consumed with fear that he blindly wandered off a 200-foot sheer drop straight to his death. The circus workers offer to take Ellsworth into Argus with them, while Paladin decides he's going to buy 2 boat tickets to India for a newly married couple. The end.
Thank you so much, Earl, for that excellent recap.
Thank you. Never in the history of Mission Log using this phrase from an Austin Powers movie has this been so apt. I really tried to keep it tight, like a tiger.
Indeed you did. You did a fine job, friend.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Earl, I don't know if you know this about me, but aside from the common house cat, my favorite animal is a tiger. So I was excited that we were going to have a tiger episode here today.
And I don't want to jump straight to the end, but do you feel like the tiger delivered on the whole tigers? I mean, we did get it. A tiger.
We in fact got a tiger. I wasn't real sure what to anticipate, but there was in fact a tiger. It was not like the Monster of Moon Ridge, where it was a Scooby-Doo episode and there was no actual monster. So, they did in fact deliver on the tiger. So I was delighted to see a tiger. So,
contents, one tiger.
Contents contains one tiger. But man, we opened this episode up, and Paladin, I haven't noticed in other episodes, does he carry his regular revolver, or is he just always packing his Derringer when he's in his civvies, if you will?
I think he's got the Derringer in his civvies, and I was trying to figure that out, like, would this man be caught without the peacemaker that he's usually got on his hip,
right?
Which is the model of revolver that he carries. I have a feeling that in Paladin's mind, the 2 shots that he can get out of that Derringer cover him enough to get back to his room. He'll probably go in there, close the door real quick, come out 30 seconds later, and he's all in black and ready to take on anybody.
Right.
Because what a guy.
What a guy. What a guy.
Now, did you notice in the opening titles that our traditional out-of-context dialogue from later in the episode is gone?
Yes, I did, in fact. So that was a bit unexpected. Speaking of what a guy, we just get random girl walking through. Hello, Monsieur Paladin. And I'm like, what a guy.
Hey, at least she hasn't blossomed like a tulip this week.
You know, that might have made it funnier. Or maybe she could have jumped out of the shadows like a tiger.
Well, here's the thing. I was curious enough about that actress to look her up on IMDb.
Mm-hmm. Paladin's love interest uncredited, Jean Carmen.
Yeah, so in her IMDb, she has a modest resume, but apparently she was buddy-buddy with Marilyn Monroe and got out of the business when Marilyn died. That's the point at which you stop seeing her show up in credits for anything. She makes quite an impact with that one line. You know, she's like, hello, Mr. Paladin. And she keeps walking, and it's like, hey, boy's going to follow her.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, hey, boy. So let's talk about that for a second. Poor hey, boy. We don't spend a lot of time on it, but you know that anyone who is regularly in Paladin's orbit, he is Paladin's man in Havana. Hey, boy must see and hear stuff that just is not for us mere mortals. Stuff that it takes a strong stomach to digest. Yeah.
Paladin's over here having to pull his Derringer because he thinks the other guy's reaching inside his coat pocket for a gun. If you have to draw a gun in my place of employment, I'm going to be a little bit shook up too.
Yeah. It's kind of played for laughs here, but I'm glad that we stopped the show for a couple of minutes to acknowledge that just by being Paladin's friend, hey boy has to accept living with perhaps a higher amount of danger than most hotel porters do day to day.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we need a whole episode dealing with Hey Boy's PTSD, but it's just kind of interesting to see an acknowledgement that he is not unaware of what Paladin does, and he has not quite gotten out unscathed. There is an episode in Season 1 called Hey Boy's Revenge, where he is very much at the center of the plot, and he is the one who needs Paladin's help. And so, yeah, Hey Boy knows exactly who he is working for and what the man does.
Right.
I did get a big laugh at the end of that scene of Paladin telling Hey Boy, here, have this medicinal sip of brandy. And then Hey Boy just gulps down the rest of the glass like, okay, I need the whole thing, buddy.
If you get some good brandy, it can be pretty smooth, easy to gulp down medicinally.
Hey Boy is going to be very happy for the rest of his shift. And good on him. He has more than earned it.
I mean, it wasn't quite that big, but, to quote Quark, a few sips of this and you'll be relaxed for the next 3 days.
Yeah. Now, this scene, like I said, there was a lot in this scene that had an impact.
Yeah.
From the passing woman to scrawny, suspicious-looking British guy showing up, and kind of made me wonder, how many people have tracked Paladin back to his home base?
It's a good question. His business card with a musical cue does say Paladin, San Francisco. I can only imagine there aren't that many folks named Paladin in San Francisco, despite it being a big town.
He's the only Paladin in the phone book.
Right. He only has to go by one name, like Prince or Madonna.
Yeah. It really makes me wonder, I mean, this kind of led me down a whole rabbit hole. Is his presence at the Hotel Carlton making everyone else there a bit less safe? I mean, is this like, if you remember Season 1 of Highlander, the TV series, Tessa's art studio was not a safe place to be because the big bad of the episode invariably tracked McLeod back to Tessa's studio. Now, from a production standpoint, I get it. Tessa's studio is a standing set. The Hotel Carlton is a standing set on the Paramount lot of all places. So, you always feel free to do as much business in the Carlton as you want to in a given episode, because set's right there. We're not taking it down. But, it kind of leads you to kind of some story logic thinking, like, has anyone actually followed him back there with less than good intentions, or have all the people with less than good intentions not survived their encounters with him anyway, and so he's safe?
I feel like Paladin's the kind of guy who would know if somebody was trying to track him. But yeah, good question. I think it's a completely valid question.
I mean, okay, everyone get started on your Have Gun Will Travel fanfic now. See if you too can write an entire story that takes place in the hotel. Because, Gene could do it. Now, one last thought on Paladin's passing love interest. That line that Paladin says, as he just keeps leering at her from across the room, devils can be found in many shapes. First thought there is cue Devil Inside by In Excess. And I laughed so loud. I'm telling Hey Boy, okay, go get my train tickets. Hey Boy starts following her, and he's like, no, Hey Boy, this way. Yeah, you're going to buy me train tickets, not follow the lady, right? So, maybe there is a payoff for Hey Boy for all this danger. Maybe there are fringe benefits that we as the audience do not get to be privy to.
Mm-hmm. To quote the great philosopher Elvis Presley, "You're the devil in disguise." So sorry for everyone who just had to sit through my Elvis impersonation. I don't know if I said I'm sorry already, but maybe I should say you're welcome? Oh dear.
I like the fact that Paladin is not about to answer Ellsworth when he is asked if he took the case because of the money or the mystery. It reminds me of one of my least favorite things about interviewing for any job. Why do you want to work for us? And I hate having to come up with something more flowery than, I need to pay the rent and I need to eat. I hate that question. And I hate how many times in my life I have had to quickly toss some classy word salad together to answer it. Why is anybody looking to work for anybody? And since when is the answer to that question a part of the bar to entry?
Right.
So I like Paladin's approach to this. He just blows the question off along with his cigar smoke, and we're not talking about that anymore. Okay, that is the perfect answer.
I had a friend who was applying for a part-time job somewhere, and he was asked that question, and he was like, honestly, I want to adopt a puppy and buy a mandolin. Like, hey, that's...
You're hired.
Yeah, he's got that. As soon as Ellsworth rolls up, I'm just like, not a fan of this dude. He's very pompous. I mean, you get to his house and he's got a garden with a monkey in it. Granted, it's a different time, but anyone with the kind of funds to have exotic animals is, and you're not a zoo.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing: we find out pretty quickly cats don't like him, and so yeah, totally checked out on Ellsworth.
Yeah, nope. Kitty cat don't like you. Yeah, forget it.
I wrote this note down before it actually got flagged in dialogue by Paladin. Mm-hmm. It seemed like this was Gene's version of the superstition about, cats gravitating toward the house guest who is the most allergic to cats.
Mm-hmm.
Except Paladin said, cats gravitate toward people who don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the person they pick out in the crowd. Now, speaking as someone who is the human cat magnet, if I have a superhero identity, I am the human cat magnet. Ellsworth should consider himself lucky. He's got kitty cats just showing up in his place, mainly because he leaves the door open.
Yeah, anything can wander in if you leave the door open.
Yeah, if he would just let one of these cats curl up in his lap, give us some belly rubs, get some purring going, he would find himself a far less stressed out man.
Would agree with that.
Continuing our Ellsworth love fest here. Knocking over the chess pieces because Paladin beat him without even trying. Okay, at this point, I was ready for a guy in a big fake tiger suit to just bust into the set and punch him out at this point. They're great!
Tiger Punch, now available from Kool-Aid.
Exactly.
Growing up, my sister and I know how the chess pieces move. I am not a chess strategist or player by any stretch of the imagination. But my mom had this massive, not like massive, but it was a good-sized wooden chess set. And so my sister and I would play with that all the time. And the pieces were much larger than like a regular chess. It was great for like little kids. Like you had these big pieces to hold whatever. We would play crazy chess, where basically we would each pick a color and then start smacking the other person's chess pieces.
Battle chess.
Battle chess.
Yeah.
I mean, it was basically wizard's chess, you know? I mean, that was what it looked like he was trying to play. He was trying to play a game of crazy chess, a la Ashley and Whitney. So, except Paladin wasn't having any of his bull. So
I'm starting to feel like Peter Graves in the airplane here. Ashley, have you ever been to a Turkish prison?
Can't say I have.
Have you ever heard a real mountain lion scream before? I hope not.
I don't think I have. I have been in the presence of a bear, but it did not make noises other than I was like 4, and one came up to our picnic area at the Great Smoky Mountains where I grew up, and I remember just kind of being like, whoa, there's a bear over there. And, you know, it was maybe like 20 feet away from me, but my dad being like, oh crap, I've got to protect my kid. Like, he starts throwing, like, rocks and sticks at it. And then there was a ranger nearby, and he yelled at my dad for doing that. And my dad's like, I gotta protect my kid! Like, what are you doing? So
the tension was unbearable.
The tension, indeed, was unbearable. And so was my dad after that. He was like, Rah!
I used to have a little place that was just far enough off the main roads that it could almost be considered out in the country. I was on main water, I was on city water, I had electric, I had cable, I had internet, but it was off the beaten path far enough that it was where horrible, horrible people came and dumped animals that they didn't want, which is why I wound up with, at maximum occupancy, 5 cats and 2 dogs, all of whom became my best buds. They were my family. But one time, at night, in the dead of night, I heard a mountain lion scream outside. And let me tell you, that gets you up off your sofa to go bring the dogs in, and all the while you are hoping you get to come inside yourself. It sounds like somebody being murdered. I mean, it's that kind of scream, and it's like, whoa! So I totally understand Paladin jumping up and drawing his gun on that.
Yeah.
I am not armed, but I had very much the same reaction, which was up out of the chair.
Yeah.
My last animal thoughts are for our poor little monkey friend who lives at Ellsworth Compound. What happens to the monkey? We're planning out Pondu's life for him. What about the monkey? Does no one want to pet the monkey?
I hope the monkey goes with him and Laurie back to India.
I hope so, but failing that, I do have some headcanon tied into past shows we have covered on Gene-ology. Paladin's going to make a detour and drop that little guy off at West Point, and one of that monkey's descendants will become the subject of the episode McKinley's Challenge, which Norm and I covered way back when. Paladin's going to go to West Point and chuck a monkey over the wall.
There you go. I like that. I like that idea. Good headcanon. Earl, I gotta say, I really liked how Pondu described the natives. Paladin starts to talk about the indigenous folks, and he's like, yeah, I went to their box dance the other night.
Yeah, and he's talking about square dancing.
I had to laugh at a box dance. Have you ever been to a square dance?
Yes, I have.
I have, too.
I grew up in the state of Arkansas, and apparently this was something that all elementary school students were required to learn.
There was a organization I used to work with when I lived in Tennessee. It was, basically like mentoring middle school kids. And for their college-age leaders, they had an annual square dance at Valentine's Day. And fun fact, that was where I figured out that I really, really liked Mr. Nerdy Blogger. He was my dance partner at a square dance. So I have been to a couple of those, and it was quite fun.
Hooray! Hooray for the box dance!
Hooray for the box dance!
Yeah, my accent is about as authentic as Paul Clark's.
Yeah.
Let's carry that over into the discussion. I'll see you there.
Yeah.
All right, Ashley, as our tiger hunt continues, I had to really overlook the fact that Pandu is a fairly well-drawn character who is not unlikable. He's being played by a white actor made to look indie.
Yeah, he is.
His accent is about as authentic as Apu from The Simpsons. Which, think about it, if you want to know how much things have changed between 59 and now, we no longer have Apu on The Simpsons.
Right.
The character is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a cartoon. But still, in 1959, it was common practice that no one blinked at. Very few people commented on. Whereas today, you get called out on it if you're not doing authentic casting. I don't want to weigh down the whole podcast with this discussion, but for what it was, the actor did okay with the part. You know, it's kind of the 50s Hollywood version of an Indian accent, so maybe working our way up to Johnny Quest here.
Yes, Johnny Quest was readily in mind, because even in the 80s, he was voiced by Rob Paulson.
Yeah.
And they brought him back for the second season of The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, too.
Yeah.
That was 97.
Yeah, and so, yes, anyone going back and looking at this show with a modern eye, yes, we're aware of the inauthentic casting. That was just how things were done back then. I'm not saying that excuses it.
Right.
But both the industry's expectations and the audience's expectations were in a process, a very early process, I imagine, of evolution. Something that does not go out of style and is perfectly excusable then or now. Let's eat the rich. I feel like in Ellsworth, we may be dealing with a person or a type of person that Gene has met before, either in his writing career or perhaps in his military career, maybe when he was a cop. I feel like Gene greatly disliked this kind of person. And so the scene where Paladin is rattling off reasons that he does not care one bit for Ellsworth, right after Ellsworth demonstrates what a jerk he is by belittling his hired help, I feel like this is Gene speaking through Paladin, letting us know this is what the writer of this show thinks of this kind of person, and he makes no apologies for it.
Yeah, just there was so much about Ellsworth is like, well, I've got a big enough checkbook, therefore, you got to do what I say, or else, or I'm going to be mad about it, and then you're not going to get some of this big enough checkbook.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I've got issues with let's go hunt a tiger.
Yeah.
And I don't know at what point that this became illegal, but obviously that wasn't in the 1870s when this takes place, and certainly wasn't in the 1850s when they say Paladin killed a tiger. I'm like, no, don't kill any tigers. They're pretty and endangered.
They're big kitties.
Big kitty cats, why?
And yeah, I know that's going to wind up on my headstone. He thought tigers needed belly rubs.
Yes.
He is that guy you saw on the news. It's either going to be that or, Star Trek 4 where Spock jumps in the tank with the whales. If I ever go to the Cincinnati Zoo, that's going to be me in with the hippos. And they are not the hell my hippos, but I want to swim with them so bad. They need belly rubs. Anyway, we know how Ellsworth is going to meet his end. Now you know how I will meet mine. I also felt like this applies to the scene where Paladin and Pandu go into town and all of these rednecks are making fun of Pandu. And it seems like they know very well, they know in whose employ Pandu is. And they know that they do not fear any reprisals from that employer because he is more like them than he is like Paladin. Whereas Paladin cow kicks the guy with his spurs on. And the guy doesn't go down immediately, but he is very quickly looking for a place to sit and get off that leg.
He was lucky that was all he got. Because, we've seen Paladin break a few tables with some dudes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he'll pick you up and just throw you through some furniture.
Yeah.
So that guy got off easy. But here's another thought that occurred to me, talking about Gene being way ahead of his time. The scene where Paladin is kind of going down the list of the poor old tiger's shortcomings and health issues. Okay, this is something we talk about a lot now, about treatment of animals in a circus. Was Gene way the hell ahead of the curve here?
It's a good question. My other thought was, because I don't know how circuses and things like that are run. Is it common practice to have an older animal who is more easily tamed or less likely to be ferocious? Is that just, the way it is?
That's a question I can't answer for you. I just remember listening to Paladin talk about, the implication really was this tiger is a threat to no one, but kind of in the background of that, reading between the lines, there was a bit of, you don't treat this tiger very well, do you?
Yeah, and even so, the guys were like, come here, baby, talking to it like it is like just a big kitty cat, and then Paladin's like, oh yeah, about as harmless as somebody's old grandfather, no teeth, more, bark than bite, if you will, or roar than bite.
Yeah.
And they're like, don't talk down to that. Don't talk down to him. It's an odd scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as that tiger was back in the cage, I recognize exactly that flop. We are ready for belly rubs. This animal is not going to kill anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we basically get Ellsworth scaring himself to death. I have lots of thoughts on this. Some of them are in the wrap-up, but I'm not going to miss Ellsworth. I'll put it that way.
It's like he knows that he has done harm, and he's about to get what he deserves, and he's not paid attention, and there he went. Paladin says some men have a better idea about their own ends than others, so...
It's a weird way to go, and I was kind of pleased that whatever fate Ellsworth met, it was not at the hands or paws of the tiger.
No.
Well, it wasn't the tiger's fault. The tiger had nothing to do with it other than, oh, hey, I went out and, went for a walk and, probably pooped under a bush or something. And don't disturb me, and that's why I'm growling. That's why that tiger was growling. It's just like, go away.
Yeah. As a fellow owner or person owned by cats, when it's vet time and you try to get the cat into the carrier, I mean, they did a lot easier with that tiger than me trying to stick my kitties. Now, Oliver he's my tiny tiger, and by tiny I mean he's a 15.5-pound thick boy. But he at least can be caught and put in the carrier. He doesn't like it. Nynaeve, or my house panther, is like 85% leggy, and so her legs are going everywhere. But I was like, man, they got that cat to go in the box pretty quickly. The cat traps were working.
Yeah, that really made me wonder about that line earlier. Up until they were pointing out that it's a basically toothless tiger. So, she would starve out here if it's not for us. And I was like, would she really?
I don't know about that.
Because I'm assuming that the tiger still has claws.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that's what does the fatal damage to what is for dinner. Mm-hmm. I don't think that tiger's going to starve.
I think the only thing I might add is, while yes, we do have some ethnic miscasting here. I mean, we see that again in Star Trek. The big one is Khan. Again, you've got a brown person playing another kind of brown person.
Yeah.
But it's still not the same.
True. It's not quite authentic. And like I pointed out in trivia, Elsa Cardenas was frequently, okay, you're hired, you're playing this ethnic type that has nothing to do with your ethnicity, but you have the look, and it's just facepalm. Big.
You are playing this not white person.
Or as the casting jargon was back in the day, you were playing the exotic type, which was kind of this catch-all category
for not white.
Yeah. It's the characters, to their credit, are written as honorable people.
Yes. It didn't feel overly stereotyped, or they weren't just there for, comic relief.
Right.
Or they're the ignorant brown person in the room or something like that.
Right. And
they show Paladin making a point of getting mad at those rednecks in front of the tobacconist for being jerks.
Yeah. And I still feel like, and this is something that has come up in coverage of past shows where Gene has addressed racism, since we were in this era where your casting jargon was, you're playing the exotic type, Gene is kind of turning that around and weaponizing it a bit because, okay, I am talking about this minority, but what other minorities could you possibly plug in here that white people should treat better and not condescend or treat as property? It always feels to me like anytime Gene has tackled racism so far in his career, it has always been a foreign nationality of some kind. But it feels like what he's really wanting to talk about is much closer to home.
All right, Earl, can we put this tiger back in the cage? Or, as Exxon might say, do we have a tiger in the tank for this week's episode?
We can but hope. So, please tell me what your thoughts are. Show us your stripes. Let's hear what you're thinking after watching Tiger. Was this worth it? You were looking forward to the tiger. Earl,
I have some thoughts, and I think they're great. Oh man, how many more tiger puns can we sneak in? Is there a record? Like, can we contact the Guinness people? But yeah, Ellsworth took a long walk off a short pier, or cliff, if you will. I don't like it when people and things die. I don't wish that on other people. But also, I feel like Ellsworth is, he's a victim of his own hubris.
Oh yeah, in a big way. Paladin's quote, the exact quote from the episode, "Sometimes a man knows his next appointment all too well." He literally says this over Ellsworth's body. I don't think Paladin's going to miss the guy. That's for sure.
No. And, I mean, admittedly, the other guys didn't know him at all. But nobody seems to be all that sad about it.
Maybe kind of a reminder that your real worth in life is how you treat those around you. Did you help? Did you harm? Because that tiger will come home to roost. The tiger probably just ate the chicken and is just going in the same direction.
Right.
And perhaps the message here about, a man knows his next appointment all too well. Maybe it's a health condition. Maybe it's a lifestyle. It may be a health condition caused by a lifestyle. But in Paladin's estimation, it's not always something random. A lot of times, it's something a long time coming, and you may even know what it is. That's an interesting message, but I don't think it's at the heart of this episode. I think the heart of the episode is Paladin caring about the people who have been unlucky enough to wind up working for Ellsworth. Especially once Ellsworth shows his stripes. Because the heart of the episode is Paladin worrying about how Pandu and Laurie are being treated. The heart of the episode is Paladin cow-kicking a little bit of hurt in the direction of the men who expect no one to stop them from making fun of Pandu in town. And so, yeah, the episode may be called Tiger, and it contains exactly what it says on the tin. Contents, 1 tiger. And that feels an awful lot like maybe Gene got a phone call from the producer saying, "Hey, Gene, can get a really tame circus tiger for 1 day of location shooting for a couple of hours. We can't have it attack anyone. Please write a script around that and go.
It's almost like it's like a fan fiction prompt challenge or something like that.
Yeah. But, hey, Gene is a pro at this point. He's a pro in demand at this point. So, with that minor formality out of the way, okay, first it was one set. Then it was a tree. Now I've got to write an episode around a tiger. Since we got the tiger in there already, Gene is dropping in some very Gene thoughts on racism and the European-descended male's tendency to just assume he rules the roost. And his thoughts on that. But in a way, that's kind of where the other message actually does come in for a bit of a landing. Ellsworth, and you pointed this out in the previous segment, Ellsworth knows what his misdeeds are. He knows he could be doing better and could be doing more with his life. He could be nicer. He could be kinder. He's choosing not to.
Yeah.
On some level, Ellsworth knows the bill for that is going to come due.
Yeah.
His death is not the fault of the tiger. It's more of a coincidence there happened to be a tiger nearby. Ellsworth dies because he is desperately trying to avoid paying up on that bill.
It feels very Twilight Zone in this respect. Or even like Edgar Allan Poe, Telltale Heart, The Black Cat.
Oh, Henry.
Yeah, like, Ellsworth knows that he's not done right, but he's well off enough that he can afford to. But he's still on some level afraid that that's going to catch up with him.
Yeah.
In some way. So he feels like he's got the Bengali tiger curse on him.
Well, maybe he should be a little bit worried because, as it's pointed out, and it's an interesting red herring that I feel Gene worked into the script. I thought this was very interesting that we kind of got diverted a couple of times down the path of, are all of these clues, are all of these cat sightings, is Pondu messing with him because of how he has been treated? And then Gene has Paladin back away from that and apologize. But it's a red herring that, again, tips Gene's hand of what he thinks of the kind of character, the kind of man that Ellsworth is. Mm-hmm. That he could hardly hold it against Pondu if this was what was happening.
Right.
So I don't think you have to go digging too far to find out what Gene's thinking here. It's just finding a new way to present it, and please show a tiger by the time it's over.
Mission Log Gene-ology is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you would like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. If you have any material that might be of interest to us that isn't already in the Roddenberry archive, drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com.
On the next Gene-ology, Charlie Red Dog. Special thanks to consulting producers Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, Paul Shadwell, and David DeCacci.
We'll be back next week with more of your favorite programs. This concludes our broadcast day.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.